Lena Wilson had always dreamed of running her own auto repair shop, but when the bills stacked up and business slowed down, she was forced to take a gamble. Spending her last $5,000 on an old, abandoned garage in the middle of nowhere seemed like a desperate move until she uncovered something that would change everything. Hidden beneath the dust and rust was a secret so mind-blowing, it would reshape her life forever. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. If stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode unveils an even bigger discovery. Let's get started. Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. And if stories like this move you, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode unveils an even bigger discovery. Let's get started. Lena Wilson sat at her cluttered desk, staring at the bills that seemed to multiply no matter how many she paid off. The fluorescent lights above her flickered intermittently, casting a sickly glow over the stacks of overdue notices and empty coffee cups. Her garage, Wilson's Auto Repair, had been the dream she fought for since she was a teenager. But now, at 28, it was starting to feel like a losing battle. She ran a hand through her messy hair, brushing away a strand that had escaped her ponytail. Her father had taught her everything she knew about cars. He'd been a mechanic, just like her, a man who'd instilled in her a love for engines, and the belief that nothing, no matter how broken, was beyond repair. He'd passed away 5 years ago, leaving her the garage, and now she couldn't help but feel like it was slipping through her fingers. The sound of a phone buzzing snapped her from her thoughts. She glanced down at the screen. It was her last supplier, reminding her that her account was now in the red. Another call she couldn't afford to take. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it, focusing instead on the online listing she had opened in front of her. The ad had been up for weeks. Abandoned garage for sale, $5,000. Cash only, as is. It had to be a mistake, she thought, or a scam. But the more she thought about it, the more it seemed like her only option. Her shop was barely hanging on. She could keep patching up used cars, turning a tiny profit here and there, but it wasn't enough. She needed something bigger, something with potential, and maybe, just maybe, this garage was it. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but she couldn't ignore the tug in her gut, the feeling that this could be her last chance to make it. Her last $5,000. The money she'd saved over years of scrimping, barely making ends meet. The amount she'd poured into this business, hoping for a break that never seemed to come. With a deep breath, she clicked the Contact Seller button. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard and then, with a flicker of determination, she typed the message, "I'm interested. When can I see the place?" She hit send before she could second-guess herself, and just like that, the decision was made. The drive to the abandoned garage was longer than Lena expected. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked, overgrown roads. She hadn't thought to check the exact location when she made the inquiry, just the price and the vague description of the place. Now, with each mile, the world around her seemed to fade away, replaced by the barren landscape of forgotten towns and dilapidated buildings. Finally, she pulled up to the site, a massive, old structure that looked like it hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. It was tucked away at the end of a dirt road, its faded, rusted walls blending in with the surrounding wilderness. The garage had seen better days, that was for sure. But as she took it all in, she felt a flicker of hope. There was something about this place that felt familiar, like a piece of a puzzle that had been waiting to be discovered. The seller, a grizzled man with a weathered face and hands that looked like they had never seen a soft day, met her at the entrance. He gave her a quick nod and then pointed toward the large, wooden double doors. "It's all yours," he said, his voice rough and uninterested. "Just be careful what you find. There's more to this place than meets the eye." Lena's heart skipped a beat. More? She'd been hoping for a space to store parts, maybe work on a few side projects. But the implication that there was something hidden here, something beyond the surface, piqued her curiosity. She thanked the seller, handed over the cash, and watched as he disappeared into his truck, driving away without another word. The garage doors creaked as she pushed them open, the scent of old oil, must, and damp wood rushing in to greet her. The interior was as much a mess as the outside. Dust covered every surface, and the floor was littered with forgotten tools and rusted metal scraps. But among the chaos, Lena noticed something strange. There were no cars, no engines, no parts, just stacks of crates, shelves piled high with old machinery, and something that didn't belong. Near the back wall, half hidden by a stack of what appeared to be old engine blocks, was an odd, metallic structure. It looked like an enormous metal box, with strange etchings along its surface, almost as if they had been carved into it over time. Lena's eyes narrowed. That wasn't a part of any car she knew. She took a cautious step forward, reaching out to touch the cool surface. The moment her fingers brushed against it, she felt a hum, a vibration, almost like the structure was alive. She pulled her hand back, shaken by the unexpected sensation. The noise from outside, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of trees in the wind, seemed to fade away, leaving an eerie silence in the garage. Lena's breath caught in her throat. What was this? Her curiosity was now a roaring fire, and despite the overwhelming sense of unease, she couldn't turn away. She made her way over to the pile of crates and began rummaging through them, each one heavier than the last. The old wood creaked under her movements as she shifted items around. As she was about to give up, she noticed something strange. Underneath a pile of rusted exhaust pipes, an old metal door. She hadn't seen it before. Lena bent down, her hands trembling slightly, and pried the door open. The hinges screamed in protest, but it didn't matter. Inside was a small room, dimly lit by the weak rays of sunlight filtering through the dust. And in the center of that room was something that made her blood run cold. A circular pedestal, covered in thick layers of dust, stood beneath a tarpaulin. She hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. What was it? What kind of place had she bought? With shaking hands, she pulled back the tarpaulin, revealing a metal object, a piece of alien technology, unlike anything she had ever seen. It was sleek, almost organic in shape, with pulsing lights embedded along its surface. The air around it felt heavy, charged with a strange energy. Lena stood frozen, staring at the object. This was no ordinary junkyard. This was something far beyond her understanding. Her gamble, her last $5,000, had just led her to something that would change everything. Lena sat on the dusty floor, her back against the metal pedestal that housed the alien artifact. The room felt colder now, the silence thick with the weight of her discovery. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the strange device, its surface smooth and warm to the touch. It hummed softly in her palms, like a heartbeat that didn't belong in this world. She pulled her hand away, unsure if it was wise to touch it again. Get a grip, she muttered to herself, trying to steady her breathing. Her father had taught her to trust her instincts, especially when it came to mechanics. This was something else. After a long moment, she stood up and dusted off her jeans. Her curiosity burned brighter than ever, and she knew she couldn't leave this place without uncovering more. There was something here, something big. But where did she start? Her eyes scanned the room, and then just as she thought she might have missed it, a crumpled pile of papers tucked underneath a rusted tool chest caught her eye. She moved quickly, kneeling beside the stack, her heart pounding. The papers were old, brittle, their edges curling with age. As she carefully unfolded the top sheet, the first thing she noticed were intricate designs, blueprints, but not of anything she recognized. The drawings were too complex, the measurements too precise, as if they were meant for something far beyond human technology. Her pulse quickened. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. The more she looked, the clearer it became. These weren't just random sketches. The blueprints depicted a machine, one that looked like the object on the pedestal. But these were no ordinary plans. They were detailed instructions, complete with labels in a language she couldn't begin to comprehend. Lena's mind raced. Was this some sort of alien engineering manual? How was it even possible? The patterns on the pages reminded her of the strange etchings she'd noticed on the metallic surface earlier, as though both were part of a grand design. Her fingers hovered over the paper, tracing the lines, her eyes flicking between the diagrams and the artifact in the corner of the room. There was a note scrawled in the corner of the last blueprint. It was in English, but it didn't make much sense. Activate only when the correct sequence is known. Do not disturb until then. Lena's heart skipped a beat. Who had written this? Who had been here before her? And what did it mean by correct sequence? She carefully folded the paper back and tucked it under her arm, standing up to leave the room. She knew she couldn't figure this out alone. She needed someone who could make sense of this, someone with the knowledge she lacked. But who? As she stepped back into the main garage, her eyes landed on the strange object again. Her father would have had a million questions, but he would have also been the one to figure it out. The thought made her chest tighten. The garage felt emptier now without his hands on the tools, without his presence guiding her through the maze of mechanical mysteries. She didn't have the answers, but she had something even better. A key to a secret that could change everything. The weight of it settled in her gut. She needed help. Her fingers hovered over her phone. She had no idea who to call, but she knew exactly who would want to see this. Dr. Hayes. Dr. Hayes was an eccentric scientist she'd met a few years ago at a local tech conference. He'd always been fascinated by fringe science and the possibility of alien life. His research had never gone anywhere, but he'd always been open to exploring new ideas. If anyone could help her decode these blueprints, it was him. Lena dialed his number, her thumb pressing the screen like it was the only thing holding her together. Hello? A familiar voice answered after the second ring. Dr. Hayes. It's Lena Wilson. You're not going to believe this. The following day, Dr. Hayes arrived at the garage. His wild, unkempt hair and thick glasses made him look like a walking stereotype of a mad scientist. But his eyes gleamed with the kind of excitement Lena had only seen when he spoke about his own theories on extraterrestrial life. She led him straight to the back of the garage, where the metallic object and blueprints awaited. His eyes widened the moment he laid eyes on the drawings. These, he murmured, they're not from around here. Whoever designed these had knowledge of materials that, frankly, we don't even possess. Lena stepped back, watching him pace in front of the blueprints, his finger tracing the complex designs. You think they're real? He turned to her with a grin that showed he hadn't believed in anything so strongly in years. Real? Lena, this is the kind of thing I've spent my career dreaming of. As they spoke, Lena couldn't help but notice how different the garage felt with him there. Less like a place of abandoned junk, more like the birthplace of something incredible. Dr. Hayes was already scribbling on a notepad, pulling out a pocket calculator and muttering under his breath. His eyes darted between the alien designs and the object, piecing together what seemed to be a theory. Then he stopped mid-thought, turning sharply to Lena. Where's the rest of it? Lena blinked. Rest of what? The machine. You don't think this is just a power source, do you? He walked quickly toward the pedestal, eyeing the strange object with increasing interest. This is a piece of a much larger system. You have to look for more. There's a room here somewhere where everything connects. The hairs on the back of Lena's neck stood up. What do you mean? A room? Dr. Hayes gestured frantically toward the back wall, eyes scanning every inch. There's something hidden, a compartment or an opening. We just need to find it. Lena stood frozen, a rush of adrenaline filling her veins. She'd already discovered so much, yet it felt like there was more to uncover. Together, they began methodically searching the walls, knocking on the floors, tapping the beams. After what seemed like hours, Dr. Hayes's hand landed on a small section of the floor near the far corner. Here, he said, voice laced with excitement. I knew it. They moved quickly, prying open the floorboards with a crowbar. Beneath the surface was a hidden door, a metallic hatch that had been almost perfectly concealed. Lena felt a chill run through her as she stared down at it. This wasn't just some forgotten garage. This was the epicenter of something far bigger. With a few sharp pulls, the door creaked open, revealing a small underground chamber. The air inside was cold and musty, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. They stepped inside carefully, the dim light from their flashlights cutting through the darkness. And there, In the center of the room was something that left them both speechless. A glowing, cylindrical object. It hummed softly, its lights shifting in colors Lena couldn't describe. The rest of the room was sparse, except for a set of strange, almost organic machinery and more blueprints pinned to the walls. It was as if this chamber had been the heart of the operation all along. Lena's heart raced. This was it. This was the discovery that could change everything. The truth was staring her right in the face, and yet, the more she learned, the more questions she had. She turned to Dr. Hayes, who was already examining the glowing cylinder with trembling hands. "This is the real deal," he whispered. "This isn't just alien technology. This is a power source. It could change the world." Lena and Dr. Hayes spent the rest of the day in that underground chamber, carefully cataloging every detail. The object in the center, the glowing cylinder, hummed with a quiet but palpable energy that seemed to vibrate through the air. It was unlike anything Lena had ever encountered. The technology was too advanced, the materials too foreign, and the implications too vast. She had been in her fair share of garages, but nothing prepared her for this. "Lena," Dr. Hayes said, his voice filled with awe. This could change everything. We've only scratched the surface." Lena couldn't tear her eyes away from the cylinder. It seemed to pulse with life, glowing in waves as though it had a heartbeat of its own. The walls around them were covered in alien symbols and diagrams, all of which seemed to depict the same central theme, a source of unimaginable power, harnessed and controlled through a series of unknown processes. She had no idea what it all meant, but the more she saw, the more certain she became that she had stumbled upon something far beyond her comprehension. "We need to get this to a lab," Dr. Hayes continued, running his hand along the cylinder's smooth surface. "This isn't just energy technology. It's a whole new paradigm of physics. We could unlock so much from this." Lena's pulse quickened. The scientist in her could feel the draw of discovery, the need to learn, to understand, but a deeper, more instinctual part of her felt a knot in her stomach. There was danger here, not just from the unknown technology, but from the very people who might want it. Dr. Hayes continued to inspect the device, unaware of the darker thoughts creeping into Lena's mind. If this discovery went public, if it fell into the wrong hands, the consequences would be catastrophic. Power on this scale wasn't something to be shared without great care. "What do you think they were doing here?" she asked, looking around the chamber. "Why was all of this hidden?" Dr. Hayes paused, glancing around at the alien equipment with growing unease. "I'm not sure, but I think whoever built this knew exactly what they were dealing with. This room, this entire space, wasn't just for storage. It was designed to hide something powerful, something dangerous." Lena's mind raced. She felt the weight of the moment. It wasn't just a gamble anymore. What she had found could make her rich beyond her wildest dreams, or it could destroy her. "We need to be careful," she said, her voice steady but full of resolve. "We can't let anyone else know about this. Not yet." Dr. Hayes looked at her, his eyes widening. "You're talking about secrecy? This could change the world, Lena. People have a right to know." Lena shook her head. "Not yet. Not until we understand it better. And we need to make sure it's in the right hands. The wrong people could use this to destroy everything we know. We have to be careful." Dr. Hayes opened his mouth to argue, but then stopped himself. For the first time since they'd started investigating the garage, he looked uncertain. The gravity of the situation had finally begun to sink in. Lena turned back to the glowing cylinder. The path ahead was murky, and the stakes were higher than she could have ever imagined. She had no idea who else might be searching for this technology, or how far they would go to get it. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking in a deep breath. When she opened them again, she knew what had to be done. "We'll need help," she said softly. "But we can't trust just anyone. We need someone who can keep their mouth shut." Dr. Hayes nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Someone who knows how to handle this sort of thing?" "Exactly," Lena replied, her gaze locking onto the cylinder once more. "And I think I know just the person." Lena's mind was racing as she left the underground chamber, Dr. Hayes following closely behind her. The weight of the glowing cylinder in her thoughts felt like a constant pull, an ever-present reminder of what they had just uncovered. She had to make sure it stayed out of the wrong hands. The garage felt emptier now, somehow more sinister. The walls that had once been lined with discarded parts and tools now felt like the walls of a vault, holding secrets that could either elevate humanity or ruin it completely. Lena quickly locked the door to the hidden room, ensuring no one would find it without knowing exactly where to look. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As she turned the key, she looked at Dr. Hayes. "I know who we need," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor of uncertainty in her chest. Dr. Hayes raised an eyebrow, a skeptical look on his face. "Who? Ben?" Lena replied, her jaw tightening. "Ben Archer." Dr. Hayes blinked. "The engineer?" Lena nodded. "He's a former military engineer. If anyone can make sense of this, it's him. He's worked with classified technology before, and he's been under pressure to keep his mouth shut about it. He'll know how to handle this." They both knew what Lena meant by handle it. Ben had a reputation for keeping things quiet, for staying off the radar. He was exactly the kind of person they needed, someone who could decode the alien technology without drawing attention to it. They spent the next few hours going over the blueprints and studying the strange device in the garage. Dr. Hayes was meticulous in his examination, jotting down notes and theorizing about the object's purpose. But Lena felt the gnawing need to move faster. The more they stayed here, the more they risked someone else discovering it. Finally, Lena grabbed her phone and dialed the number. Ben didn't answer right away, but when he did, his voice was gruff, as always. "What's up, Lena?" Ben asked, sounding like he hadn't had a decent night's sleep in days. "I need you to come to the shop," she said, keeping her voice calm. "I've got something to show you. It's big, and I need you to promise me you'll keep it between us." There was a long pause before Ben replied. "You've got me intrigued. All right, I'll be there in an hour." Lena hung up and let out a slow breath. Ben's arrival would mark the next step in this strange journey. But deep down, she knew that once he saw what they had uncovered, everything would change. There would be no going back. An hour later, Ben pulled into the parking lot of Wilson's Auto Repair. His truck was battered, much like Lena's own car, but it had a certain utilitarian charm to it. He got out, his face expressionless, but his eyes scanning the surroundings as he walked toward the garage. Lena met him at the door. "You ready?" she asked, forcing a smile. Ben grunted, looking her over before following her inside. The air in the garage felt thick with anticipation. As soon as they entered the main room, Dr. Hayes stepped forward, his hand extended in greeting. "I'm Dr. Hayes," he said, his voice calm, but there was an underlying excitement that Lena could sense even before he spoke. Ben shook his hand, but his gaze quickly shifted to the glowing cylinder. His face hardened slightly, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight. Lena held her breath. This was the moment of truth. Ben was the kind of person who would immediately recognize the potential of the technology, but he would also see the danger in it. She had to trust him. "Tell me what you see," she said quietly. Ben didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, his fingers brushing the surface of the cylinder. The hum that had been barely audible to Lena now resonated through the room. Ben's brow furrowed as he stepped back. "This." Ben paused, his voice low and steady. "This isn't from around here. Whatever it is, it's not human-made." He looked at Lena, his expression unreadable. "And you're telling me you found this here?" Lena nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle over her. "I need your help, Ben. We need to understand what this is, how it works, and how to keep it out of the wrong hands." Ben's eyes flicked between Lena and Dr. Hayes before he let out a slow breath. "All right, I'll help. But we're doing this my way. No more risks. No more secrets." Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her. Ben wasn't just the right person for the job. He was the only one who could help them navigate the dangers that now seemed to lurk around every corner. They had a team now. And together, they were going to uncover what lay hidden in that glowing cylinder. Lena, Dr. Hayes, and Ben spent the next few days in the garage, their lives consumed by the alien technology. The moment Ben laid his hands on the glowing cylinder, the entire tone of the investigation shifted. He didn't just look at it with the same awe and excitement that Lena and Dr. Hayes had. He saw it for what it was. An opportunity. A potential breakthrough that could change everything they knew about science, energy, and the universe itself. They worked in shifts, studying the object, the blueprints, and the strange equipment in the underground room. Ben was methodical, always cautious, but his mind raced with the possibilities. He spent hours attempting to interface with the cylinder, using tools and methods that Lena couldn't even begin to comprehend. Meanwhile, Dr. Hayes deciphered the symbols on the walls, trying to make sense of the alien language that seemed to explain the technology's power source. But after 3 days of non-stop work, Lena felt the unease settling back in. There was something about the glow of the cylinder that was different now. It no longer felt like an innocent piece of technology. It felt dangerous, like a weapon disguised as a gift. One evening, after a long day of work, Ben sat back in his chair, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He didn't speak for a moment, staring at the cylinder on the workbench, deep in thought. Lena, who had been sorting through more of the blueprints, looked up at him. "We're getting closer," Ben said slowly, as if weighing his words. "I've connected the energy source to a basic power system. It works, Lena. It actually works." Lena's heart skipped a beat. "You're serious?" Ben nodded, the faintest hint of excitement creeping into his usually reserved expression. "I hooked it up to a generator. The power output is incredible. Off the charts. This could replace every energy source we have today. Clean, efficient, unlimited." Lena felt a cold rush sweep over her. This was what she had feared. If this technology were to get into the wrong hands, the world would be at the mercy of whoever controlled it. She turned to Dr. Hayes, who had been working alongside Ben. "Do you realize what this means?" she asked, her voice shaky. "We're talking about the power to control everything. Energy, resources, maybe even weapons. Whoever owns this could change the world in ways we can't even imagine." Dr. Hayes met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "We're on the verge of a new era, Lena. We can't just walk away from this." Ben leaned forward, the intensity of his gaze matching Lena's growing concern. "We're talking about $120 million. Maybe more. And that's just the beginning. The potential here is limitless." Lena's stomach twisted. She had known they were sitting on something valuable, but hearing Ben say the number out loud made it real. It wasn't just the science, it was the wealth, the power, the consequences. The door to the garage creaked open, and Lena jumped slightly, breaking her train of thought. A man stepped into the dimly lit space. He was tall, wearing a dark suit and a serious expression. His sharp eyes scanned the room, settling on the cylinder. Lena's heart skipped again. She had a sinking feeling in her chest. She didn't know this man, but she had seen enough in the last few days to know that he wasn't here for the science. "You must be Lena Wilson," the man said, his voice cold and authoritative. "I'm Agent Carter. I've been looking for you." Lena froze. "What do you want?" Agent Carter stepped forward, his gaze never leaving the glowing cylinder. "I'm here because you've found something I've been looking for, and I don't intend to let it slip through my fingers." Lena's pulse quickened. She glanced at Ben and Dr. Hayes, who had both tensed, sensing the shift in the room's energy. This was the moment. They weren't just dealing with a discovery anymore. They were dealing with a race for control. The government, or someone like it, was here, and they had their sights set on what Lena had found. Agent Carter took another step forward. "You've got something valuable, Miss Wilson. Something worth a lot more than $120 million. You're going to help us, whether you like it or not." Lena's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea what was going to happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. She was no longer just a mechanic who had taken a chance on a rundown garage. She was in the middle of a game far bigger than she had ever imagined. And the stakes? They had just gone up. The air in the garage felt heavier now. Agent Carter's presence was suffocating, his authoritative tone chilling every corner of the room. Lena felt trapped, caught between the unrelenting pressure of the government agent and the technological marvel that lay just beyond her reach. The glow from the alien cylinder pulsed like a heartbeat, as if it knew the danger they were in. Ben shifted uneasily, stepping closer to Lena. "What exactly do you want from us?" he asked, his voice steady but with a trace of defiance. Agent Carter's eyes never left the glowing cylinder. "You've made quite the discovery here, Miss Wilson, and I intend to ensure that the government secures the technology before anyone else does." He paused for a moment, his gaze flicking back to Lena. "It's not just worth $120 million. It's worth much, much more. And it's too dangerous to be in private hands." Lena swallowed hard. She had been expecting something like this. The moment she realized the true power of the technology she had uncovered, she knew it would attract attention. But hearing the words from Carter's mouth made it all too real. This wasn't just about profit or science anymore. This was about control. "I'm not giving it to you," Lena said, her voice firm. "You can't just take it. Carter cut her off with a raised hand. "You don't have a choice. You may think you do, but trust me, this isn't a negotiation." His gaze turned cold, calculating. "I know you've been working with Dr. Hayes and Ben Archer. The three of you have been tinkering with something that could revolutionize energy, weapons, hell, even space travel. The world will never be the same once we unlock its full potential." Lena felt the blood drain from her face. There it was again, the word control. She wasn't just dealing with a scientific breakthrough. She was dealing with a game of power, something far bigger than her garage, bigger than her life. "What happens if I refuse?" Lena asked, her voice steady despite the rising fear in her chest. Carter's expression remained impassive, but there was a cold smile lurking at the edges of his lips. "Refuse, and you'll make yourself an enemy. A dangerous enemy. You won't just be up against me. You'll be up against anyone who wants to harness this technology, and they'll stop at nothing to get it." Ben stepped forward, his jaw clenched. "You're threatening us now?" Carter's gaze flicked toward Ben. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply stating the facts. This isn't just about taking something from you. It's about preventing something catastrophic from happening. You don't understand what you found, Miss Wilson. But we do." Lena's mind raced. She had to think fast. The weight of the decision was suffocating, and the room seemed to close in around her. She knew she couldn't just hand over the cylinder. It wasn't just about money or fame. It was about responsibility. If the wrong people got their hands on it, the world would be at risk. She had no idea what she could do, but she couldn't let Carter walk away with it. "I need time," Lena said quickly. "I can't just hand this over. We need to understand it first. Please, just give us a few more days." Carter eyed her carefully, his cold expression unwavering. "Fine, a few days, but you'll give me everything you have by the end of the week. No more games." He turned toward the door, and for the first time, Lena saw a flicker of something else in his eyes, a recognition of her resolve. Maybe, or perhaps just the calculation of how much time he was willing to give her before things got ugly. He paused before exiting. "Don't test me, Miss Wilson," he said quietly, before disappearing into the night. Lena stood there for a long moment, the silence in the garage almost deafening. The weight of what had just happened settled over her like a cloud, and for the first time since discovering the alien technology, she felt utterly alone. "What now?" Ben asked, his voice tight with frustration. Lena turned to him, Dr. Hayes standing silently beside him. "Now, we figure out what to do with this. We can't just let them take it. We need to understand it, and we need to do it fast." She was no longer just trying to save her garage or her business. She was trying to save the world from something that could tear it apart. And she had no idea how much time she had left before that happened. The following days felt like a blur. Lena, Ben, and Dr. Hayes barely slept, working tirelessly to decode the alien technology. But with each passing hour, the pressure mounted. Carter's warning echoed in Lena's mind constantly. "Don't test me." They were running out of time. And it was clear that Agent Carter was not a man to be reasoned with. Lena had tried to reach out to a few trusted contacts, hoping to find someone who could help them, someone who might have the resources to hide or protect the technology. But she found herself in a tangled web of confusion and uncertainty. Every call she made seemed to lead to a dead end. No one could be trusted. One night, as the garage sat still in the deep silence of midnight, Lena stared at the glowing cylinder, its soft hum reverberating through the room. She felt its pull, its power, and the fear of what could happen if it fell into the wrong hands. She could feel the weight of her decision, growing heavier with each passing second. "Lena, we've been over this," Ben said, his voice sharp with exhaustion. He'd been working non-stop for nearly 3 days, his normally calm demeanor starting to crack. "We need to tell someone with the proper authority. This is too big for us." Lena shook her head, her hands shaking slightly as she brushed a strand of hair from her face. "No. If we tell the government or any official authority, it'll be out of our control. They'll lock it up, and we'll never see it again." Dr. Hayes, who had been quiet for hours, finally spoke. "She's right. If it gets out, there's no telling who will want to take it. We can't trust the government to handle this. It's too powerful, too dangerous." They all knew the stakes. Every time they made progress, they uncovered a deeper layer of the truth. The power embedded in the cylinder was mind-boggling, but with that power came consequences they couldn't fully understand yet. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was soft at first, almost tentative. Lena's heart skipped a beat. She didn't need to look at Ben or Dr. Hayes to know that they were both already on edge. Everyone had felt the tension build over the last few hours. They all knew something was coming, something they couldn't control. Lena moved cautiously toward the door, her hand hovering over the doorknob. She was expecting Carter, or worse, someone who wanted the technology. She took a deep breath, opened the door, and found nothing. But as she stepped into the cold night air, she saw a shadow move quickly at the edge of the yard. She turned, just in time to catch a glimpse of someone darting behind the garage. Lena's blood ran cold. Her first thought was that it was one of Carter's people, an agent sent to check up on her. But then something strange happened. The figure, whoever they were, wasn't moving like a government agent. It was too fast, too fluid. Before she could react, a familiar voice called out from the darkness. "Lena, over here." Lena's eyes widened in shock. It was Marcus Hale, the journalist who had covered her story when the Mustang was restored, another name she hadn't expected to see. He was the last person she thought would show up here, especially with everything going on. "Marcus?" Lena called out, her voice full of disbelief. "What are you doing here?" Marcus quickly approached, his face tense and serious. "You're in danger, Lena," he said urgently. "I've been following the story, and I know what you've got in that garage. There are people looking for you." Lena's mind raced. "What are you talking about? How do you know about the—" "I have connections, Lena. Connections you don't even know about. And these people—" Marcus hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. "They won't stop until they get what's in your garage. You have to trust me. I can help you." Lena stared at him for a long moment, trying to process the sudden turn of events. "I don't know who you're talking about, but I don't need your help. I've got enough trouble as it is." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes scanning the surroundings as though making sure they weren't being watched. "They're not just government agents, Lena. They're mercenaries, people with a lot more power than you're ready to deal with. They've been tracking you, and they know exactly what you've found. If you don't move fast, they'll be here soon." Lena's heart pounded in her chest. The words hung heavy in the air. Mercenaries. She had no idea how far this had gone, but she was starting to realize just how out of her depth she was. She looked over at Ben and Dr. Hayes, who had followed her to the door. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Who can we trust?" Marcus spoke again, his voice low and urgent. "There's a place, a safe house. I can take you there. It's the only chance you have to get out of here before they find you." Lena stood still, her thoughts racing. The garage, the technology. It was all so much bigger than her now, bigger than any of them. She turned back to Ben and Dr. Hayes. "We can't wait anymore. We have to move now." The ride to the safe house was long and tense. Marcus's truck roared down the dimly lit highway, cutting through the cold night air. Lena sat in the passenger seat, her thoughts swirling as fast as the road around them. She couldn't believe how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. Just days ago, the idea of finding alien technology felt like a dream, an impossible gamble. Now, it was a nightmare she couldn't escape. In the back seat, Dr. Hayes and Ben were silent, lost in their own thoughts. The silence was heavy, thick with uncertainty. Lena could feel the weight of the cylinder of everything they'd uncovered bearing down on them. Marcus glanced over at her. "You're making the right call, Lena. The longer you stay, the more danger you're in. You can't trust anyone now, not even the people who say they want to help." Lena nodded, her fingers gripping the edge of her seat. She hadn't realized how much she'd been holding her breath until now. The danger was real. It was tangible. And it wasn't just about money or fame anymore. It was about survival. They finally pulled off the highway, winding through a series of narrow, dark roads, until they reached a secluded property tucked away behind high fences. It wasn't much to look at. From the outside, a small, weathered house, surrounded by trees and a thick mist that seemed to crawl up from the ground. It felt like the kind of place where secrets went to hide. "Welcome to the last place anyone would look for you," Marcus said, pulling the truck into the driveway. Lena stepped out, her legs feeling stiff from the long drive. She looked around cautiously, as though expecting someone to jump out of the shadows. This wasn't the life she'd imagined. But at this point, she had no choice. She followed Marcus inside, where the dim interior of the house was filled with the scent of stale air and old books. "It's not much, but it'll be safe," Marcus said, leading them into a room at the back. The walls were lined with maps, classified documents, and old tech that Lena couldn't even begin to understand. This wasn't a typical safe house, it was more like a command center. "We've been keeping tabs on the people who are after you," Marcus continued, his voice low. "And I don't know how much time we have, but you need to decide what comes next." Lena stood still, taking in everything around her. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding in her chest. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. She had something worth more than money, more than she ever thought possible. But with that came the responsibility to protect it, and that was a responsibility she didn't take lightly. Ben, who had been quiet for most of the ride, spoke up. "What exactly are we dealing with, Marcus? Who are these people?" Marcus hesitated for a moment, then pulled out a folder from a nearby desk. He slid it across the table to them. "They're not just mercenaries. They're part of a private military group that's been involved in covert operations for years. They've been tracking the technology you found, Lena, and they've already made contact with people in high places." Lena's throat tightened. She had known the stakes were high, but this was far worse than she had imagined. "What do they want?" Lena asked. "They want control," Marcus replied flatly. "They don't care about the technology. They care about what it can do. They'll use it for weapons, energy, whatever gives them power, and they won't stop until they have it." Lena felt the room spin. The implications of what Marcus was saying were terrifying. This wasn't just a personal decision anymore. The fate of the world was at stake. She looked at Ben and Dr. Hayes, who both seemed just as shaken as she was. The gravity of the situation had finally hit them all. "So what do we do now?" Dr. Hayes asked, his voice quiet but resolute. Marcus leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "We need to decide what to do with the technology. The government is already aware of its existence, but the people after you, they'll be much harder to deal with. You can't trust anyone outside of this room." Lena nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle deep into her chest. She couldn't trust anyone. Not even Marcus, not fully. She had to make the right decision. "We can't let them have it," Lena said, her voice steady but firm. "We need to destroy it. All of it." There was a brief silence in the room. Marcus and Dr. Hayes exchanged a look. Ben raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting that answer. "Destroy it?" Ben asked, disbelief creeping into his tone. "Are you serious? We could be looking at billions in research. This could change everything we know about energy, technology, space travel." "I know," Lena cut him off. "But if it gets into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. I won't let that happen." There was a long pause, as they all considered her words. Lena had never thought she would be in this position. She had risked everything to uncover this technology, to discover the truth behind the alien artifact. But now she realized that the price of discovery was higher than she could have ever imagined. Marcus stood up, moving to a desk in the corner of the room. He grabbed a phone, typing something quickly into it. "I'll get the equipment ready. You'll need to make the call yourself." Lena looked at the others, her heart heavy with the decision. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain: they couldn't turn back now. They had to do what was right, no matter the cost. And whatever came next, she would face it head on, ready for whatever came after the price of discovery.